Hello there and thanks for watching this week's Weatherquest farming forecast. Well, as we go into summer we look back on what's been an exceptionally dry May and spring as a whole across many parts of the UK, particularly further south. It's been record-breaking in terms of sunshine as well. It was the sunniest May on record, in fact the sunniest month on record across the whole UK. So a record-breaking month in terms of sunshine and rainfall amounts. But it does look like later on this month, over the next 2 or 3 weeks, it could be that we see conditions turn slightly more unsettled. There's a bit more potential for seeing some rain around at times. So looking a bit more promising for those that have been wanting rain after such an extended and exceptionally dry period. First though, before we take a look at the forecast, just going to have a quick look back across May and spring generally. This is the rainfall amounts as estimated by the radar across the UK for the month of May. And as Dan mentioned last week, you can see the stark contrast from northwestern Britain, western Scotland, where some places saw 200mm or more of rainfall, exceptionally wet in some places over the high ground, to a very incredibly dry month across parts of England and Wales. You can see those blue colours there indicating rainfall amounts of 5mm or less. So some places seeing as little as less than a millimetre for the entire month in parts of eastern and southeastern England. So exceptionally dry, and in fact the radar potentially overestimating some of the rainfall that fell during that month. So many places in those blues less than 5mm of rain. So a real contrast between northwestern parts of the UK and further south. In terms of what that reflects as to how that differs from a normal May, this map here shows the rainfall anomaly for the month of May. Western Scotland much wetter than average in some places. Some places saw double or more than the regular amount of rainfall that they would expect to see in May, particularly across the high ground, the Western Highlands, exceptionally wet in some of those locations. You can see further south, again exceptionally dry, complete opposite story, less than 5% of the normal rainfall in some places. England on average saw 17% of its normal May rainfall. That's an average of around 9.6mm, so an exceptionally dry month for the southern half of the UK. Now, a good way of seeing just demonstrating how exceptionally dry it has been is this map here showing for each weather station across the UK the number of days since it last saw any rain. Now, many places, most stations really, it's been a week or so since there was any rain. Only really northern Scotland, where it's 2 or 3 days ago when there was a little bit of patchy rain. This map up until the 31st of May. But many places going a week without seeing any rain. Parts of eastern and southern England, some places have gone 2, 3, perhaps even 4 weeks without seeing any rain. Yeovilton in Somerset hasn't seen any rainfall recorded since the 5th of May, so almost a month where not a drop of rain has fallen at that weather station. So it's been exceptionally dry across southern and eastern areas. Taking a look a bit more closely at East Anglia, these are the extremes for rainfall and sunshine. It was both the driest and sunniest May on record. In fact, it was the sunniest month regardless of the time of year on record for May and both the UK. So an exceptionally sunny month, particularly for rainfall. You can see to go up to the next driest month you almost have to double or more the rainfall to see the amount of rainfall that it saw. So exceptionally dry for East Anglia and a very sunny month as well, with East Anglia just seeing 9% of its normal rainfall and 160% of its normal sunshine. So very dry and sunny conditions for many places. And with all the dry weather, we've seen a lot of images like this around the countryside of farms and fields being near constant irrigation. Speaking to some farmers, it's been almost constant irrigation due to the just lack of any rainfall at all on the fields. So very dry, and it is beginning to cause some serious problems for some of the crops. Even though we might see this more unsettled period coming, for some places it's a bit too late for some of the crops already, but we just have to hope that there's a bit more rainfall around over the next few weeks just to reduce the losses and make up some lost rainfall that we've seen. So how does this month fit into generally the longer picture, spring as a whole? This is again the rainfall anomaly estimated by the radar, but for the whole season, for spring 2020. And again, apart from Western Scotland where it was slightly above average in places, pretty much the whole of the UK seeing below average rainfall. So an exceptionally dry 3-month period, particularly in parts of, say, eastern northern England, parts of the Midlands. Some places seeing 20% of their normal spring rainfall. So very dry for the majority of the UK. So now how does that 3-month period fit into the longer 2 to 3 year image of what we've seen? So the stats for May at the minute are still provisional, but you can see March, April, May, both all drier than average, particularly May, but March and April were drier as well. And you will remember it's not that long ago, February or more, back through until around September, October, where it was pretty much above average for most months. It's only January in that autumn-winter period where it was actually slightly drier than average, but pretty much every other month in autumn and winter was well above average, particularly February when we had all that rain from Storm Kira and Storm Dennis come through. So after a very wet period, it's now flipped and been very dry. And actually the long-term 12-month rainfall deficit is back to around 0. It's actually slightly above that, although obviously this dry weather has had some really serious impacts for agriculture. In terms of the long-term deficit, it is back to around average. Now in terms of how that's affecting the soils, this is the latest update from the Cosmos UK network as valid on the 31st of May, so just a few days ago. And this indicates the soil moisture for a number of stations across the UK. A blue colour, that would generally show the soil in that location is at its full capacity, so as much moisture as the soil that can hold. Now you can see, looking at this image, many places showing up as maroons or the dark pink. Now the maroon is around 0.1, so that's a tenth of its full capacity of moisture. So the soil's really very dry due to particularly the last month, but also the previous 2 months before that. The accumulated effect of those 3 months has led to really dry soils across much of the UK. You can see it's not just the south and east parts of England, it's really the whole of the UK which has seen quite dry soils at the minute. Taking a look at a specific station, this is Riseholme in Lincolnshire, and it shows the trends in soil moisture over the past couple of years, so back to the beginning of 2018. You can see the present May 2020, that's dropped right down. The soil moisture has really decreased. It's very dry. It's back to almost, well, down to almost its record dry levels. Those pinks, the lowest on record. Should say, point out the records for this station only go back to May 2016, so it's not a long record, but it is at its driest for the past few years. You can see the month before that, really going back through the winter and the summer of 2019, things, although they oscillated up and down, were generally around average in terms of soil moisture. They were in between the purple, the pink, I should say, which is the driest, and the blue, which is the wettest. They got close to their wettest levels in winter last year, but generally they were close to average. Looking at May 2020 and comparing that to the spring-summer of 2018, you can see some parallels. There was a big drop-off into summer 2018, where again the soil moisture got down to close to its record low levels. But I think the key differences between this year and 2018 is that it's happened much sooner in the season. You can see, looking at March and April 2020, that's when the soil moisture really began to drop off once we got into that extended dry period through March, April and May. So by May already, it's already well below average and real down to the pinks there. Looking back at 2018, it wasn't really until the end of May, June, when we saw that extended dry period through summer, that brought the soil moisture right down. So although there are some similarities between what we're seeing in this year and 2018, it has happened much sooner in the year, as opposed to the spring, as opposed to the summer. So that has caused some effects for farming and some serious impacts for crop growing as well, just that it's happened that bit earlier in the season and we are very dry for the time of year. But looking ahead to the forecast for the next, well, in the short term and the longer term, is looking like it's a bit more promising in terms of getting some rain. So this is the jet stream on Tuesday, a big upper ridge across the Atlantic, and running this through over the next couple of days. That ridge stays where it is over the Atlantic, but we see the jet stream go north and dive southwards across the UK, pretty much staying over the UK through until the end of the week and into the weekend, when we get this big upper trough forming over Scandinavia and the North Sea. You can see all those bits of jet stream circulating round, and that's going to bring, from tomorrow, cooler conditions, cloudier conditions, and the potential for seeing rain and showers really through until the end of this week. It's going to turn much more unsettled and feel a bit cooler. So taking a look in a bit more detail, this is how things stood on Tuesday. Area of high pressure across the Atlantic, still ridging across southern Britain. So that actually brought dry and sunny weather for Tuesday as it has done for the past few weeks really. But this area of low pressure, small area of low pressure moving southwards across Scotland and into northern England through Tuesday, bringing a bit of rain and some heavy showers potentially during the afternoon. So this is the last of the sunny and dry days, and things are going to turn more unsettled later this week. So taking a look at Wednesday, you can see high pressure still out to the west, but that area of rain now pushing southwards across the UK before clearing out into the continent by the end of the day. Now, the further east you are across East Anglia and parts of southeast England, there may not actually be a huge amount of rain. It's likely just to be cloudy with a few spots of drizzle or the odd shower. So not huge amounts of rain for eastern parts of England, but further west across the Midlands, Wales, southwest England, there could be, if any, in any sunshine, any heavy showers get going in the afternoon. It could be that a few places see 10 to 15 mil in a few localised spots. So potentially some significant rain further west, but the further east you are, it is going to be a little bit drier, but more just a cloudy day. Looking ahead further into the week though, this is Thursday, you can see that area of low pressure now becoming more situated across Denmark and into the North Sea, and you can see all these bits of rain circulating around that, with showers developing in between the rain as well. So it's quite a messy forecast in terms that I imagine the day-to-day detail, if you look at the forecast, will change quite substantially perhaps in some places, just due to the way that different models are handling where this low is situated quite differently, and that impacts the location of all these bits of rain spreading around it. So I think the location in the forecast of where these bits of rain are, and subsequently where the showers form in the sunnier spells, is going to affect how the forecast looks over the next few days. So don't take the detail, I think, beyond day 2 or 3 too literally, but there is potential into the weekend of seeing outbreaks of rain or perhaps some heavier showers as we go with this area of low pressure situated in the North Sea and it all circulating around and it's turning a bit more unsettled. So in terms of what things are looking like beyond that, this is the mean sea level pressure for Bedford. You see Tuesday, high pressure still dominating, but once that rain comes through on Wednesday, we get the cooler air coming in, low pressure beginning to dominate. The pressure really drops off down into the weekend. You can see fairly good agreement between all the models as well, that down into the weekend we see reducing pressure, which leads to more unsettled conditions, more cloud, and the potential for rain and showers. So definitely a strong signal for turning unsettled this weekend. Beyond that, there are signs that then pressure picks back up, but you can see all the different model runs beginning to deviate. The further apart those grey lines are, the less confidence there is in the forecast. Now generally the red line being the average, it is showing an increase then into the early part of next week, but it goes up and down. You can see into next weekend it then troughs back down again before picking up. And all these different model runs are doing that in a slightly different pattern. So by the end of next week it could be that we're in something slightly higher pressure again, but it could be that we're actually down to something sort of low pressure again. So increasing reduced confidence as we go out into the week beyond next, but relatively looking more changeable, with the potential for seeing more rain, I think, over the next week and perhaps beyond that. Now with the uncertainty that's around with all these rain and showers in different areas, it's the best thing to get the uncertainty and the different models, how they're handling it, is to ring our forecast hotline. Our forecasters are still available 6 AM to 6 PM every day, even though we are now working from home. Still available for you to ring and get the latest forecast. So feel free to ring anytime and we'll be able to help you out with any questions in the forecast that you have. So looking ahead beyond the next week or so, this is the week 2 of the forecast period, so from next Monday through until the Sunday afterwards. This is showing the mean pressure anomaly. So these blue colours here showing areas where pressure is lower than expected, or lower than the average, and areas of red showing where it's above average. So you can see Western Europe still being dominated by these blue colours. That suggests lower than average pressure, which suggests more unsettled conditions and the potential for some rain or showers. So still looking like it does stay unsettled into the second week of June as well. This is how the rainfall anomaly looks. For the UK, mainly the eastern side of the UK is where there's these slight green colours, which is above average rainfall, and that's due to that area of low pressure being further east, so bringing areas of rainfall to sort of eastern parts of the UK, but still a more unsettled look for many places. Particularly where it looks around the western part of the Mediterranean, where there could be some quite heavy and thundery showers for many places, but Other than that, it's a bit more of a mixed picture. Eastern Europe seeing some wetter than average conditions, but parts of Germany, the Czech Republic, Poland actually look like they could stay a little bit drier during that period. Now, with that low pressure bringing a northerly flow and cooler air from the north, we are expecting temperatures to drop off quite substantially into next week, even from, well, to be honest, even from tomorrow and through the end of this week. This Saturday, temperatures could be as low as 13, 14 degrees in some places, and in southern Britain, and even with quite a strong wind, that will feel quite chilly. So noticeably cooler from the end of this week into next week, but even then, below average temperatures across much of Western Europe in that cooler northerly flow. But as you move further east into Eastern Europe and Western Russia, temperatures look to remain above average there. Moving into the third week of June, now this is a little bit of a change to previous forecasts. Previous runs of the monthly forecast had suggested that beyond the end of this week and the first part of next week, we were going to see a return to slightly more settled conditions, but there does now seem to be this trend for into that third week of June, the week beginning the 15th, that low pressure still looking to dominate across much of Europe. You can see those blue colours across many central areas, and how that reflects in the rainfall. Many places, the UK, Central Europe, parts of Spain, Portugal, parts of Scandinavia, all showing up green, so that suggests above average rainfall, a much wetter spell of weather during that week than we have previously had. So it is looking a bit more promising for those of you that are desperate of rainfall as we go through the next couple of weeks, especially beyond that into sort of week 2 and week 3 of June. In terms of temperatures, it's still staying chillier than average across western and southern parts of Europe. We're still into the cooler air dominated by low pressure, so much cooler temperatures still through into that third week, but warmer than average across Scandinavia and beginning to encroach into some central parts of Europe as well. So becoming warmer the further east you are. Now into the last week of June, there are then signs of that high pressure beginning to try and build in from the southwest again. So there are hints of it becoming more unsettled. You can see those pink colours just about ridging across Western Europe, and looking at how that reflects in the rainfall forecast, those brown colours there indicating a return to slightly drier than average conditions into the last week of June. So a 2-3 week spell of something more unsettled before then hints of something more settled returning to Western Europe. In terms of temperatures, back to something chilly across much of Europe. Well, not necessarily chilly, but cooler than average for many parts of Europe, whereas Scandinavia is still showing up with a hint of something slightly above average. And the UK is sort of in the middle of this area. It does depend on how much we see the ridging of the high pressure coming in, and that will affect the wind direction. So the UK is in between the cooler air to the south and the slightly warmer than average conditions further north. So to summarise, a record-breaking month for sunshine amounts and rainfall, or the lack of rainfall in some areas across the UK. But after hot and dry weather for the last few weeks, conditions do look like they might turn more unsettled in the short to medium term, pretty much from tomorrow onwards through the next couple of weeks, before perhaps turning more settled again towards the very end of the month, where it does look like high pressure might try and build in from the west. So thanks for watching this week's farming forecast. As ever, you can see our day-to-day forecast on social media, and you can check out our daily podcast for East Anglia on our website.